So I've decided to make a bonus video for this class. It's another self-made object, but this time a little bit more complicated. We're going to be using live shapes in Photoshop again, but this time with some clever commands which preserve your shapes to create new ones. What we'll end up with is this CD-ROM mockup in Photoshop. I like to use it for branding examples since I've seen companies use this for their own before. You can add some nice variation to your mockups as well and make them a little bit more unique, so I think it's a good addition to your other Office products. To start off with, I'm going to create a canvas size of 500 by 500 pixels with 300 dpi. We're going to be working with the ellipse tool first, but before that I'm going to colour in my background a peachy colour so I have something to see my transparency over. Don't forget to delete this at the end though if you want your smart object to work. Then I'm going to select my ellipse tool and draw out a circle by holding down Shift. I'll then go to the Properties panel and enter in a width and a height of 500 by 500 pixels, and I'll give it a greyish colour so we can see what we're working with. Now I'm going to draw our next inner circle. So holding down Shift again to draw a circle and selecting a height and width of 150 by 150 pixels. And I'll give it a darker colour so we can see it. Then I can press Shift and highlight both my layers. And using the Align tools up here, I can centre align my circles. Next I'm going to pick the Direct Selection tool and highlight my inner circle to pick up the path. I'll hit Ctrl+C on my keyboard to copy the points and path, then I'll make sure I'm onto my big circle layer and I'll hit Ctrl+V to paste them onto my big circle layer. Then I'll select my pen tool and from here we can subtract front shape to make a hole in our circle. Onto our next circle, I'll make it 70 by 70 pixels. And I'll do the same by copying the path. Pasting it into our medium circle this time, and using subtract front shape to create our smallest hole. And now we have our basic shape. So I'm going to change my colours quickly to check the appearance. I'm going to go for really light grey for our inner circle. And I'll hide my outer circle so we can see what we're working with. Then I'll turn my opacity right down to 8%, which is what it's going to be in the end. And at the moment it looks invisible, but in real life this layer would be translucent and almost transparent. When I add my shadow, which is what we'll be doing in the end, you'll see that actually the layer will be quite visible. For now though, I'll turn the opacity back up so we can see it since I'm happy with our colouring. So our next lines are going to be the concentric lines you get on a CD. So starting with our most inner circle, I'll make this 70 by 70 pixels. And this time it's going to have a stroke and no fill, and I'm going to make it 0.25 point. Then I'll select all my layers and align them through the centre, and I'll give my ring an opacity of 50%. Now I'll make a new circle of 95 by 95 pixels with the strokes the same. I'll align it up and I'll give it an opacity of 30%. Then my last one will be a stroke of 3, with a size of 150 by 150. Then I'll line up with the other layers, and I'll give it an opacity of 50%. And I'll change our main one to 8% and the last one we made to 25%. So the last thing to do is to bring in our texture. So I go to File, Place, and press OK, and I'll scale it on top and align it. Then I right-click on my texture layer and clip it to the largest part of our CD. By selecting Create Clipping Mask, I'll delete my background layer, and now we have our CD mockup completed. So now I'm going to make a new file to show you how we turn this into a working smart object. So with my file set up, I can go back to my CD file, the one that we were working on before, and I'll select all of my layers using Shift key, and then I'll press Ctrl G to group. I'll call this group CD-ROM Mockup. Now I can select my group and drag it onto our new file. Then I right-click on the group and I select Convert to Smart Object. And we now have our smart object ready to scale how we please. So finally, I'm going to add our shadows and texture to complete our look. So I double-click to enter Layer Styles and I go to Drop Shadow. Then from here, I can reduce the distance a little bit and reduce the size to get it a bit sharper and change the opacity to tone it down. And then I'm going to add some texture. So we go to Bevel Emboss, and I like the idea that our CD is a bit curved, so I'm going to play with these and lower the size to 2. Then I'll go to our texture tab and test out some pre-made textures. In the end, I've gone for Gouache Light on Watercolour and scaled it down to 37 with a depth of 87 and inverted it. Then I'm going to add a subtle gradient overlay by going to Gradient Overlay tab and change my blend mode to Overlay and opacity down to 11. And that's my CD done. The best thing about this mockup is that we've used our Live Shapes tool, so the items should be quite smooth compared to a pixelated rastered version. And if you save your original CD file, you can always use this mockup again and again.